Welcome to the DevLaunch Podcast, where we bring you inspiring stories of the tech industry's rising stars. Our guest today is Zack Toyota, the founder and CEO of SelfDisrpt. One of my favorite stories he shares on this episode is how he cold called his way into his eventual position as head of business development at Greenroads. You're in for a real treat today, as Zack shares his years of experience and go-getter attitude that will surely enhance your perspective of entrepreneurship. But Zack, maybe just like to start off with, normally I like to kick the show off by telling my guests a little bit about, I like it when people start off with kind of their journey or their story on how they got to where they are today. But I'd love to have the show start off actually by having you tell us a little bit about this tech company that you founded, SelfDisrpt. And I know you've done an extremely good job explaining it to me, so I have no doubt you'll explain it well to our listeners too. But would you mind telling us a little bit about the story of its founding? And just to clarify too, this isn't something that you yourself coded, right?
No, well, thank you very much for having me on the show and giving me the opportunity to speak about my rich history and the company that I'm building right now. So we started SelfDisrpt. About 4 years ago. It was actually a content marketing agency, and we were really leaning into helping principals and founders and disruptive leaders leverage LinkedIn so that they can build leads, build their thought leadership, get on shows, just ultimately create more opportunity for them. And it was mainly in the cannabis space because traditionally at that time, you couldn't market anywhere else, and LinkedIn for some reason was okay with it. So we were able to get in early and just really carve out a lane. Over the years, there's a lot of manual effort that goes into managing somebody's LinkedIn, and technology was coming out, helping automate things and just streamline that process. And for me, who's building this book of business with all these leaders that are counting on me to represent them, own their voice, and bring them opportunities under the guise of it's them communicating to people. Not a lot of folks realize that somebody was actually managing this behind the scenes. It was critical for me to find ways to speed up my day and still maintain a really high quality of work. And I ended up meeting my co-founder, Danny Wax, who was at a company at the time up in Indiana that was creating this really badass LinkedIn software, but it was just missing a few things. Stayed in touch, and I think it was about a year ago, him and I reconnected, and he's like, hey, I built my own tool. I want to partner up. So we ended up rolling his business into SelfDisrpt and pivoting from a content marketing agency that was doing LinkedIn management to a LinkedIn automation company. And right now we're actually, more of a LinkedIn demand gen company because we still do aspects of that content creation to build that funnel and build engagement while we're running our automation process behind the scenes, hitting people's inbox, hitting people's profiles, liking and endorsing folks, and just creating that founder at scale and giving them back hours in their day just by running them through our tech and through our systems. So that's really how SelfDisrpt evolved and where it is today. And no, this isn't something I coded myself. My business partner put together the code. And since then, as we've been adding our own bells and whistles, we've partnered with a development agency to just help expedite that process, as opposed to having somebody in-house can be a little bit challenging for a lean startup. And I've also learned that much like creatives, developers, it's very appealing for them to work on other things. So you don't always get their full attention. So we just went with an agency that we can work with directly, and they just handle all of the development side. And ideally, the goal is to roll them up into the company once we get to a certain size.
Very cool. So it's cool to hear even that background with SelfDisrpt, where it's like you already had the essence of it, and then you found this friend of yours that you already were connected with, but you guys kind of reconnected, and you were able to kind of merge the two essentially like similar visions to create kind of the new SelfDisrpt that's really producing a lot of value for your end clients, right?
Yeah.
Nice. I love that. That's a cool story. So, and this is still a relatively new, like SelfDisrpt is, within the last couple of years, or has it been around for a few years now?
Yeah, the company's 4 years old.
Okay.
Since we've launched and pivoted with the rebrand and the new strategy, it's a little under a year old,
Okay.
and we've been able to build very, very quickly and start to build up a team and just adding multiple partnerships and acquisition opportunities based on our growth organically. We didn't raise any money; it's all bootstrapped. So it's really been a huge success, in my opinion, just giving us so much opportunity to go and do bigger and bigger things as we want to build a portfolio of technology that can help a startup or an enterprise client streamline their sales process, streamline their marketing. It just, there's a myriad of things that we're considering doing so that we can build a true tech stack or more of that MarTech company. And it's just, so far where we're at, it's given us this really unique opportunity to take a look at a lot of different technology that complements what we do.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I like that you guys are focusing on social media because, I mean, this is not news to anybody, but social media is definitely a huge channel when we talk about a good digital marketing strategy. So I'm glad you guys are at the cutting edge there. So if you wouldn't mind, Zach, take me back, bring us back to those early days. So we're saying like, thinking like right out of college, if there, or maybe your origin story, if you will. Like, where did that spark of entrepreneurship first light for you? What were the influences in your life that gave you the drive that we now see in the ventures that you have today?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I've always been a naturally curious person and very resourceful and entrepreneurial. From a very young age, I convinced my uncle to hire me at like 13 and a half, 14 years old to go work at his smoothie shop. He owned a couple smoothie locations in South Florida. And he's like, sure, pick up the broom. And very quickly, I was doing everything but taking payments. And they were just very impressed that, this young guy was just able to put on all these hats and be very willing to learn. And I think that's what it boils down to. And high school was, saw that they were selling chocolate on campus, went and got my own candy and started selling it on campus, and got into college, was very involved in the nightlife and scaling on online companies, or that back when it was more of like an MLM style. And I just wasn't young enough to realize, it wasn't the best path forward, but it gave me some opportunity to try things out and to fail forward in a lot of ways. And post college, got involved in call centers, started my own call centers, got involved in marketing agencies, started my own marketing agency. And then from there, just, it was always trying to align myself with people who have been there and done that, or doing something that I really want to do. So I go in with a servant's heart and just come to learn, come to really work my tail off and do everything I can for that company. But in the same breath, absorb as much as physically possible so that if I really thought I can do this, I have a blueprint in front of me, or at least the do's and don'ts from my own experience. And I like to just learn by doing. So after doing many different startups that were good, bad, and different, I just came across, this technology and the ability to start leveraging LinkedIn to achieve objectives at a scale I've never seen, in any other industry. And since then, just, really wrap my arms around it and continue to run with the ball.
Oh my gosh, I love that. There's like a million things in what you just shared that I'm like, oh, I love what you said. But the one that stands out ahead of them all is that you came in with a servant's heart. And isn't that just like what it is to be truly an entrepreneur? It's not like entrepreneur isn't just like, hey, I'm a visionary. It's first and foremost a drive to serve other people, right?
Right.
So, and it sounds like as you pursued all these different opportunities and you came in with that lens of what can I do to help? How can I serve these people? It kind of helped to guide and direct your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. In more ways than not, it got to the point I was at a startup helping this gentleman grow his company. It's a really, really cool company. But I noticed it wasn't for me, but I wanted to continue to learn from somebody who's built a few businesses. So I just grit my teeth and did what you had to do. And in the very same breath, being willing to do what others don't want to do, that's startup. And that's just in general being a leader. You're constantly eating glass and jumping on fires. And that's not what you wake up like, man, I can't wait to go battle the next problem. It's everybody thinks it's all rainbows and sunshine, but a lot of times you're really just mucking through it with a smile on and keeping an even keel so that your team, is always feeling really confident. But what I was alluding to was during that time at that startup, I started my own cleaning business after hours because
Mm.
I wanted to do the things people were not willing to do. And the first thing that came to mind was cleaning offices. And that's something I could do off hours and pay off my student loans. And that was the end goal, was to pay off my student loans. So I would get up and work all through the middle of the night and just take out the trash, pick up, vacuum, clean the toilets, you name it. I did it in the middle of the night by myself. And it just built this mental callus of do the work, do the hard
Mm.
work. Who cares? It's just like in the military, the leaders pick up brass with with the infantrymen. It's because although there is a hierarchy to things, for morale, it's important that they see you're on the ground floor doing the same work that they're doing, or at least
Mm.
very willing to do it as well.
That's so good. I love that. Yeah. And even thinking about something like one of your first venture startups being a office cleaning business, like
Mhm.
there is nothing sexy about that,
No.
but I'm glad that you said that as another example. Oh, there's so many more things I wish I could dive into, but one other thing I'm really curious about when it comes to your entrepreneurial journey is it sounds like it came about pretty early on, right? You said like probably around the age of like 13, you were asking to work in your uncle's smoothie shop. Did you always feel like I don't know, like your own disposition, your personality? Were you always like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be an entrepreneur, or was it just like you kind of stumbled your way into entrepreneurship?
I stumbled my way in. I wanted to get into business. And really, I guess to pinpoint it all, I was more fascinated with how people made money. All the
Mm.
different ways that you can make money, the easy, the hard ways, the random ways that you just come across and you're like, oh my God. And then you do some math and you're like, that guy's printing $1 million a year under the radar. Nobody even notices. And that's the same thing with cleaning business. Some of the biggest businesses that, or some of the most successful business owners I know have a portfolio of really unsexy businesses that are overlooked. And that's part of, why I wanted to get into that. But no, the natural curiosity just started with being a little bit obsessive about learning how people were making money.
Hmm.
And I had no idea how I was going to apply that knowledge. I just loved figuring it out and sniffing things out. And from there, as a young man, you get fall victim to chasing the shiny object from time to time. But it gave me a lot of experience. I can say that.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. You mentioned another thing too, where it's like, part of entrepreneurship is just kind of, for lack of a better word, like grinning and bearing it kind of thing. When you think about your moving into that call center, when you made the move into that call center, was that kind of a similar thing where it's like it's not like something I really want to do, but it's something that I know is needs to be done, so therefore I'm going to kind of go after it? Or what prompted that move into the call center?
It was an opportunity, really. I had a
Hmm.
bunch of buddies who were knuckleheads who were making a ton of money at this call center, and I just couldn't help myself. And it was doing student loan debt consolidation back when it was legit, and they had federal government programs. And so I dove in head first, and this company was big enough that they had a really robust training program. And I just fell in love with learning about that sales process and getting on the phone and being told no a million times and just, battling through it. It was just really it was very complimentary to my skill set of just go, go, go. And that company ended up actually merging with a bigger company, and it became very corporate very quick. And a friend of mine had a smaller shop. So I went over there and I instantly was the best salesperson in the entire call center. It was because I just went through this ringer of a call center where all we did was hit the phones 24/7. There's 80 guys on the floor. It's ultra competitive. I went through this big training program. So seeing how I can instantly come into a startup or a small shop and make such a big difference just because of some training systems, self-management and time management gave me this aha moment. And after a couple months of just crushing it at this startup, it was my buddy's shop. I actually told him, hey, I think I can do this on my own, and no offense, but I'd like your help. I want to start my own call center. And he's like, yeah, I kind of always saw it in you. Just don't take my people, and I'm more than happy to support you, and I'll kind of help get you going. So that's what I did. I just, after 6 or 7 months of being at this call center, knocking them out of the park and quickly rising the ranks, I figured out that there was a better way to do this than me constantly giving my time for the paycheck versus if I can syndicate a really good team, we can do the same thing at a much higher scale.
Hmm. Oh, and it's like also that 6 month time period, you knew that the one of the purposes of you being there is to learn, right? Like you knew that you're there to gather a certain skill set and an experience. And then once you got what you needed in that learning, then it's like, all right, now I'm ready to do my own thing. Which again, I think is just another great example of like what entrepreneurship looks like when you're working for somebody else. I think a lot of times corporate jobs can get a bad rap, and understandably so. But the way that I look at it is, I'm like, my corporate days were a great time to learn on other people's dime. It was very low risk on my end, and I'm super thankful for it. And just like what you're saying, it's like, man, I was able to learn so much and be taught by so many like people who were doing it better than me, to then ultimately launch and do my own thing. So you only were there for 6 months and then moved on and did your own thing.
Yeah, I actually had no idea I wanted to start my own thing. It was just I came in and saw how easy, not, I take that back. It's never easy, but I saw that it's doable to launch a 8 to 10 man team, get some investor dollars, get the thing propped up and start cash flowing. It just was an aha moment. And that's why, from there, I started paying attention a little bit more to the business and how the founders were operating
Mhm.
versus sitting there and banging the phones 24/7. Although I was still getting my work done, I was calculating a lot of, okay, I'm going to need a processor. I'm going to need somebody managing customer success. I'm going to need
Mhm.
6 sales guys doing what I'm doing right now. And then it was backing into what are the leaders doing over there? Okay, they're managing systems, they're buying leads, they're managing payroll and all those things. And those are very thankless, overlooked jobs in itself that once you learn that, it's again, you're getting kicked in the teeth a lot. You're pinching pennies at a startup and then paying people out and chasing, the next cash flow or a cash flow heavy day. And so all those things in my early days just taught me a lot of grit and, being very patient and even keel, that this thing's a living organism. You have to let it grow and mature. That very rarely does it just rifle out of the gates, as a massive success.
Yeah, that's really, really good. So I know we're kind of jumping around a little bit in your career journey, but your first employee job, was that when you were like 13 or 14, or was there a different job that you can peg to as like, okay, that's probably my first official job?
That's probably my first official job. As I was growing up, I'm one of those people that I probably had like 25 different jobs growing up, and
Mhm.
finally just found my footing when I was 26. And all these things happened in the last 10 years essentially, where life came together for me, and I just honed in. But no, I've done all kinds of things. So I really could put my finger on the first thing that I did officially that I got a paycheck and had to do taxes on was working at a smoothie shop.
I love it. I love it. So, and maybe it's at that job, or maybe there's other jobs in the like formative years for Zach.
Mhm.
But could you? I know you've already shared a few lessons of entrepreneurship, but would you mind even just sharing a little bit more about maybe one or two other lessons you learned about entrepreneurship in those jobs, and like how did that set you on the trajectory that you're on now?
Yeah, well, being a self-starter is huge. You have to have some sort of autonomy to what you do, and if it's also being really honest with yourself. If there's something that you're not good at, and if you're not willing to go learn it, find somebody who's really good at it or who's good enough to start, moving the needle, because you're going to bottleneck your own business very quickly if you just try to be that guy that does everything. So what I learned very quickly as an entrepreneur is, as fun as it is to say you're Superman and can do a million things, everybody has the same time in the day. You're a lot stronger together if you put a good team around you. And it doesn't have to be, a co-founder. It could be somebody who's just really good at what they do and they plug a hole for you that you don't have to think about as much, or, have that brain damage or burning calories all day trying to create spreadsheets. If you're no good at it, find somebody who is. And that's something that the sooner you can figure that out, the quicker you're going to be able to move forward and focus on the things that are important, and your business is going to take a massive leap forward because you're not bottlenecking it with pride or avoidance behavior, whatever the case is. It's just get it out of the way, figure out
Hmm.
that bottleneck, identify it, what's mundane to you, and get it off your plate as soon as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I was gonna say with that, like, do you feel like during your employee, like as an employee, did you feel like you got some, I guess, like practical experience in that too, like being able to just like offload things? Maybe you're in like a manager role or something like that, or where did you get to experience that for the first time?
Yes, I self-baked all that. I was at Green Roads, which was at the time the largest privately held manufacturer of CBD in the United States. We were based out of South Florida, absolute rocket ship of a company. And I came in when they were at about 27 employees and cold called my way into the job. Just showed up at their sales floor. Nobody asked me to leave for a week or two. So I started hitting the phones with everybody and quickly started rising the ranks and into more of a business development role. And how that happened was it was 100% commission, and they said treat it like it's your own business. And I had just come from working at all these startups, scaling my own call center, so I knew all these little tricks on how to accelerate the process. So within my first month, I hired a 3-man team out of the Philippines to start doing all my cold calling and call setting, flooded my pipeline with opportunities. I had another VA that was doing data scraping, hitting all of the CBD companies in America that had a store locator. They were scraping all those stores because I know they sell CBD, easy barrier to entry. So I would just create a list of those and have my call center, mini call center in the Philippines, start reaching out to those people. And then on the flip side, I hired a photographer to follow me around, and we just started creating these reels before reels were a thing on Instagram called CBD Toyota. And I was just educating people on cannabinoids and CBD and just talking about the industry at a very high level, mainly as like a talking head. And it blew up. It grew faster than the Green Roads Instagram, and to the point they brought me into a meeting. I thought I was getting fired. And it was basically they were like, "What are you doing? How are you doing this?" And when I laid it all out, they were like, "Oh, that's interesting. Can you do that across the board for the company, or can you scale this? Or is there a product that we can run through that system and grow quicker?" So I came in and just became, you know, do everything I can with the resources I had and just maximize my time at that company. And it put me into a leadership position, which led to me helping build out their CRM and helping them identify acquisition targets and going through their own acquisition, working very closely with the C-suite to manage their personal brands on LinkedIn. Just an avalanche of opportunity came at me, and it was that same mindset: do everything. And if you don't know how to do it, say yes, figure it out, but do everything you can, because now I'm managing up the chain and speaking to leadership versus sitting in a sales role, which there's nothing wrong with that. But my intention was never to be a sales rep at that company. That was my foot in the door. And again, I didn't want to sit on the phones and bang the phones for hours and hours. So I just found a way to do it faster by hiring some folks in the Philippines, where I was just taking orders and closing deals versus cold calling and educating and doing all that stuff. I just streamlined it. I figured out a way to get it done.
Oh my gosh, that right there, that little snippet of however many like couple minutes, people go back and listen to that again, because there was like many really good nuggets. So the question that had prompted kind of that response was, when did you get a chance to kind of practice the kind of handing things off? And what you really unpacked there for us is you were able to bring on a team, those 3 folks, to do the tactical things that it was no longer a value add for you to do because you knew how to do it. It was just taking up time in the day for you. So you were able to direct other people to do it. And then what was birthed out of that was this new kind of experience in your career track, which is essentially stumbling your way into a really great content marketing strategy. You were able to practice it and try it out because you had the bandwidth to do it. Because again, you handed that work off to other people, which I'm so like, yeah, it's a great testament to why outsourcing can be really, really important for your own development and for your own expansion in your career. And just that aspect too of like always being willing to try new things and to learn, not to be confined to like, okay, well, now that I'm a master of this, I'm only going to do this thing. It's like, we got to continually evolve if we want to be successful in this entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I have many mentors in my life that I've worked with I seek people who have been there and done that. young and old. Experience is experience. And something that I quickly learned is a lot of these really successful people have just an absolute toolbox of things that they're brilliant at. And they also have another toolbox of things that they know they're no good at. And they're very willing to admit that or hire somebody to just
Hmm.
cover that bucket.
Hmm.
And I think that's extremely important. And I reiterate on that often is it's people have so much pride that I'm a solopreneur. That's great. You can still be an entrepreneur and do great things, but you don't need to wear every single hat. You truly don't. And there's not a lot of people who really do all that at a massive scale. If not, they have, some sort of supporting technology, or they have a very small team managing them. So it's just something to consider, as you're willing to grow, just find that ceiling or find the bottleneck and figure out a way to punch through it efficiently. It's not too hard.
Hmm. Yeah, and then what happens is kind of exactly the story that you have, which is like you were able to just kind of catapult and accelerate your growth so much more because you made that really wise decision. That's awesome. So you alluded to it a little bit earlier. You mentioned it very briefly, but I'd love to unpack it a little bit more, which is the how you went about landing this incredible role as head of business development at Green Road. So from what I gathered from what you were saying before, you said you cold called your way in. Can you unpack that? Tell a little bit more about that story.
Yeah, I'd love to. It's actually a really funny story. 2016, I'm working at a startup and I'm running a cleaning business after hours. So I'm just putting in a lot of work. I achieved my goal, paying off my student loans with the cleaning business. So what I really wanted to do was get into the cannabis industry somehow, and it was just bubbling up over and over, and it was in its infancy stage. And I don't mean cannabis like we're selling doobies. I was just very interested in how to move this plant forward from a medicinal perspective, because there's a lot of applications to it that aren't head shops and smoke shops that are truly medical purposes. So finding a legitimate company was really tough. And I just happened to be hanging out with a buddy. He had this product and he was raving about it, this CBD product. I had no idea what that was. And when I looked on the back of the bottle and saw the label, it was made in Davie, Florida, right around the corner from me. I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. So I called. Nobody picked up. It was, went straight to some lead magnet number, leave your information, we'll call you back kind of thing. So again, the company was still very young. So I found where they're located and it just showed up and showed up again and again and again. And
Wait,
they never,
you physically came to the location. You just
yeah,
like dropped in. Okay.
physically showed up and was sat in their call room, found out the whole team was at some trade show in Vegas. So I just sat there with one of the founding partners and, kind of told him who I was and where I'm coming from. And he's like, oh, that's really cool. Bring a laptop tomorrow and you can start making calls. This one guy's going to be in here. He can show you the ropes. And I sat in there with a gentleman who didn't end up on that trip for the whole week. I just listened to him and made my own calls, listened to him, made my own calls. And within that first week, I closed a couple sales that everybody was just like, who's Toyota processing an order through our system? Did somebody sell to a car dealership or something like that? So that's how I ended up at Green Roads. And a lot of the younger guys at the company thought I was a cop because they're like, who's this guy that just showed up?
He's a narc.
Exactly, with his fake name, Zack Toyota. It doesn't even sound real.
It definitely
So,
sounds like an undercover agent name, that's for sure.
oh, first of all, I was in the dark. I didn't find out for months that everyone thought I was a cop. So like me trying to hang out with my coworkers and, hey, will you train me
Didn't
on this
work.
and like show me the ropes? And people were like, no, man, we're okay. Good luck. So I was like, this is a cutthroat business. Nobody even wants to hang out with me, which whatever, it is what it is. But so that's how I ended up there. Was I just found my way, and how I got the attention of the leadership team was just doing that sales outreach process through the Philippines call center and hiring a marketer to help me just create content for Instagram and putting it out there with nobody's permission. And after a month or two of getting a lot of sales, but there was one particular product that I just got more sales than others, which was they had a CBD infused coffee product that I came to find out was the highest clicked product on their website, lowest ordered product. So
Oh,
there's a lot of
interesting.
interest there, but somehow the positioning or the pricing was wrong. So I just made it a personal point to try to figure out how to scale that product and make like myself the coffee guy. And that's another way I got a lot of attention from the founding team was this obsolete product, I think, ended up doing like $1 million in sales after we just figured out how to position it on our website.
Wow.
And I was too young to know how to position myself in between that sale to take a piece of, the growth and kind of own that product. But it did teach me how to outsource it, how to find affiliate partners, how to position, your website marketing efficiently for, an alternative product that's breaking into an industry. And a lot of it's just leading through education. So combined with all those things, like I said, they brought me into a meeting and wanted to know, what are you doing? Who are these people you hired? How are you representing our brand? Which is fair. And when I explained it, everybody seemed impressed, and they had a trade show coming up. And this is kind of what really put me on the map. It was at the time CBD was now getting regulated and had the potential to get into big box retail stores like a CVS and a Walgreens and some alternative product and wellness stores and Whole Foods, you name it. But it had to go through testing, and you had to have all your ducks in a row. Well, at this trade show, there was the ability to meet all these buyers, and nobody had considered going after them. And I convinced the founder to let me use his LinkedIn profile to reach out to these buyers and set up a meeting at this trade show. And we set up like 20 meetings a day for 3 or 4 days in a row.
Wow.
And knocked it absolutely out of the park. And so again, unique strategies, and like nobody considered using LinkedIn at all. They were like, when I asked for their LinkedIn, they're like, sure, man, have at it, have fun. We don't see that working. And so that, again, just kind of calling my shot and being willing to look a little silly. When I announced in front of all my peers, which is a 25 floor sale, 25, folks on the sales floor, that I wanted to attack coffee product, I think like literally everybody erupted and laughed. So I was like, oh my God, I can't catch a break at this company. But it worked, man. It worked out. And just be willing to do the things that people don't want to do. That's really what it boils down to.
That's amazing. Yeah, that is really incredible. And I imagine that this kind of helped you were able to kind of piggyback that success into, or like kind of snowball that success into a lot of what you then, even working on what you're working on right now with SelfDisrpt, it's in the LinkedIn space, it's in social media. Did you kind of get your feet wet in LinkedIn and social media through this experience at Green Roads?
100%. That was the first company I truly dove in and, kind of just got dirty with the marketing team. I'd always understood the marketing function and the need for it, just never had the ability to do it myself. And if I did at a marketing agency, I was on the sales side, telling people what it did and selling it. So I got to learn through selling, but I never truly understood what goes into SEO and this, that, and the other. So coming out of Green Roads and getting to work with multiple business units, the marketing division, the sales division, the C-suite, our affiliate program, it gave me a really good understanding of like what this flywheel looks like and how to really get it spinning to generate opportunity for business. And LinkedIn, I saw incredible results through LinkedIn coming from the founder's voice. Now, Zack, the business development guy doing a bunch of outreach, everybody knew what I was coming to the table with to try to pitch them something. But when I was using the founder's LinkedIn, principal to principal conversations were laydowns. I would get people on the phone left and right for them, and they had no idea it's somebody middlemaning it or managing that. And that's what gave me this, idea for SelfDisrpt was, as a founder, if you are seeking to grow your business or grow your portfolio or seek investment, whatever the case is, you can do that on LinkedIn. If you're strategic with your messaging and you're posting really good content and you're positioning yourself as an authority, it's easier to do it on LinkedIn than it is on all the other social medias that are a ton of noise and a lot of vanity, where this is a professional platform where people are there to do business. So just understanding that and hammering it every day, almost like it was maintenance, just show up and get the work done. It was extremely successful for Green Roads and for myself. And I took that strategy to this day and continue to use a lot of those same practices.
That's so cool. Yeah. And honestly, I imagine that probably 50-50 on our audience in terms of how they feel about the CBD space. I mean, I myself, I probably wouldn't get into servicing that type of business. But I think one thing that we can all take away from this, regardless of what we think about the CBD space, is if we kind of peel back the layer and look at like what is there to learn from your experience in this, is what I hear is the CBD industry as a whole one of the biggest challenges that people were having at the time was a lack of understanding
Mhm.
and a lot of stigma around it. And so what I heard you say is that education was a big piece of your marketing and how, going about doing sales well, marketing and sales both, is really upping your game from an education standpoint. Would you say that the content marketing and those reels that you were talking about, would you say that that was kind of the major way that you did your education, or did you do education primarily just through those sales calls and the one-on-one interactions?
All of them. We would stand at booths at trade shows and talk to people. I spoke on stage. I was on our YouTube videos and demo reels and sales calls. You name it, we did it. And that's really why Green Roads was so successful, is they led through education. They helped put a couple bills through the state of Florida, which were then almost identically duplicated in multiple states for hemp regulation. And they led with compliance standardization, and they led with educating the people who were at these big box retail stores that were ultimately going to champion an industry for us on our behalf, just by teaching them what this product does, dosing, everything you could think of. We covered it so that we just checked off everyone's box. Very rarely did somebody say, I don't know, I don't trust you guys. Like we set the standard across the industry for QR codes. And there's just many things that we did first and did really well, that folks would come to us for guidance or consulting. Or, like I said, multiple states mirrored the HB 1020 bill that we passed through the state of Florida, that really set an industry standard and allowed the industry to take a massive step forward. So it gave me a lot of sense of pride and integrity in what I was doing, because of how well positioned the company was and the fact that they were doing amazing things. It wasn't this garage band making CBD out of bathtubs. Our co-founder was a compound pharmacist. Our other co-founder, came out of the medical space. We just had a really strong team, and I just happened to kind of lump into a badass sales division that catapulted me into, getting myself well positioned in the company.
It's a super interesting thought, though, is as you're sharing that, like, you guys took a very multifaceted approach to really drive towards the overall advancement of the industry as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is a good takeaway. Largely my audience that I'm working to reach and to speak with are other software development agencies. And I wonder if software development agencies themselves, as they specialize in a particular industry, I wonder if they were to focus, kind of like what you guys did, focus on how, as an industry whole, if they're reaching healthcare, maybe it's advancing, healthcare initiatives that go even beyond the direct things that they themselves are doing in software development. I wonder if helping to advance an industry as a whole can help with some of that marketing and some of that awareness in the market.
It can. One thing I did learn is you're knocking down walls for other people to have a really easy runway in the future. So you have to be willing to just kind of be the juggernaut for the industry. And you're knocking down doors. If the door doesn't open, you're finding a window. You're figuring out a way to create a path forward for everyone else to benefit. So although, yes, we're benefiting, we're spending a lot of time and resources moving an industry along, whereas a company, right behind us is just marching behind us, at a very low friction or easy barrier to entry into an industry. So you have to understand that that's going to be what you're doing, is, again, just eating a lot of crap for a little while. But you're also, if you do it right and you make a difference, you're the champion. So that's
right.
Great. Your brand positioning and your market share positioning should be substantial if you have a great product. As far as, for what I do, we spend a lot of time going over and finding new ways to work with LinkedIn on their guidelines and compliance, and how can our API tie into their backend to do the things that we do within the guidelines that they set for us, so that we're not this company out there spamming people, or we're not a company out there just doing things that we shouldn't be doing that LinkedIn doesn't want. So even from that perspective, we have to gauge this on a 90-day basis at times when they change their algorithm or change their standards. And that's part of what we signed up to do. And a lot of my experience at Green Roads is just understanding that you have to be really agile and have the ability to pivot on a dime, and just know changes are coming in most industries, especially disruptive markets. that are growing and coming just out of that infancy stage. There's a lot of things that you can and can't do that you could have, probably done a year ago. And if you're not on top of that, you're just going to flag your company in a bad way and likely get shut down or banned from LinkedIn. And those are things you want to avoid at all costs. And if you're just constantly working through those compliance and working through educating, and more importantly, who are we educating the most? LinkedIn. We're trying to tell them what our tool does and how it's helping people and not hurting people, and it only enhances the user experience on their platform. That helps grease that runway for us to do the things that we need to do, because we're doing it the right way and we're communicating it in the right way to the right people.
Yeah, we're moving things forward on all fronts, not exclusively looking at how can I just go after my client. It's how can I advance the industry as a whole. And yeah, I love that. And like you said, like if you are the juggernaut, if you're the one who's paving the way for the first time, or really the trailblazer, one of the potential downsides is that your competitors might be just behind you, marching with next to no friction.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's definitely worthwhile to consider. So we've talked a lot about business development, the sales, and also your just experience in the different careers and also the startups that you worked through. And I just got to say, like, these are incredible accomplishments. And I think we have a lot to learn from you in this, and in really getting out there and doing that and selling well. But most of my listeners, I'm going to venture a guess that they're going to say, yeah, that's a great and inspiring story and all, but I'm not cut from that same fabric. I'm not that guy. I'm a software developer because I'm clever and I'm intellectual. And they might be thinking to themselves, well, I just listening to this, it makes me drained at the thought of doing business development and sales the way that you've described it. What is this person missing from all that you've shared? And where would your introverted counterparts be able to apply your career lessons?
That's a great question, and in a hopefully it doesn't come out too brash, but just get out of your own way. And I mean that, with all due respect. You can be a technical founder and have an amazing product and never get to market because you don't have great sales and marketing. But there's folks like me that fully understand that and want to partner with technical founders because, like I said in the beginning, we're stronger together. There is an ability to partner or figure out a way to work with a company that can accelerate what you're no good at or what scares you to do. And that's just something, whether you choose to go with an agency that's full suite or you find a great partner that could come in and help accelerate that process, or at least put the pieces in place for you to go and execute or find somebody to execute. There's many paths forward there, but a lot of times it's on the founder to identify and say, okay, that all sounds great. I'm never going to do that on my own. Well, if that's the case, you have to find somebody to do that, or you're just going to be where you're always going to be.
Yeah.
And that's why I partner with technical founders, is because I'm not overly technical. I know what I'm trying to develop and create from a user experience, and I know the results I'm looking to achieve, but I'm not going in and coding anything. But I have amazing people behind me that I can sit and explain this to that get it done. You very much can do the same thing where you sit and explain your goals on sales and marketing to somebody on the other side of the table who can go and get it done. And now your business is moving along. And, if it costs you a little bit of equity or some cash flow to bolster that up, if you do it the right way, it should, be one step backwards to take two steps forward, or potentially, leaps and bounds if you get great results.
Yeah, that's really, really good. Yeah, it's almost like you kind of have two options. Either get out of your own way in the sense of put aside this belief that you're not that guy or you're not that sales development person and just do it, right? Like I think about the visual of The Biggest Loser. Have you ever watched that show before? It's like these people who are very, very overweight, and then they go and they just like get kicked into shape literally. And these people who never thought that they could do this thing end up losing tons and tons of weight, in part because there is like a mental shift that needs to happen. So that's like track one, is like get out of your way in the sense of you just got to go do it. And then there's option number two, which is kind of more where you're talking about, which is, if you're really just like, I'm just never going to do this, I cannot do this, then you're absolutely right. Like you have to partner with somebody. There's not really the third option. really only leads you to the death of your business, quite frankly. Like either it's going to stagnate out or it's just going to die. It's going to shrivel up on the vine because sales and marketing needs to be core and thriving in your business if you want it to grow. So that's really, really good advice, Zach. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Um, so now I want to get into some specifics, some tactical stuff, because I just would love to get your perspective on this. You have had the experience of sales and marketing in your previous roles, so you know this stuff in and out. But as you told me, you're capable of just hiring that stuff out. And the benefit that you have is when you go to hire these people, you can tell that people are BSing you because you've done pretty much all of the sales. You've worn all those hats before.
Mm-hmm.
So would you mind giving us a little bit of a glimpse into how you're setting up your sales and marketing at SelfDisrpt in a way where others are running the execution? Like, what does that practically look like from a headcount perspective, from a marketing percentage mix perspective, like
Mm-hmm.
any of those types of things you can share?
Yeah, so that's an amazing question, and it boils down to, I think Richard Branson said it, was in order to build a great organization, you have to find really great people, give them the resources, and then get the F out of the way. That's exactly what I'm doing here. Is I try not to hire entry level until we're a couple layers in, but the first folks that I brought on are really amazing at what they do, and it just helps move things along. And you know that they're amazing at what they do because they have a track record, and the things I'm asking them to do, they're asking the right questions. Now, that's how I've set up SelfDisrpt, where it's probably a 30% split of marketers, 30% split on the sales side, and the rest is ops, finance, devs. So it's a lean team. We're at 6, and then we have a handful of developers up in Canada, and we have a handful of affiliate partners that go out and do really a lot of evangelism on behalf of the brand. So keeping it very lean and trying our best to tap into our resources and others' networks is how we've positioned the company currently. And it's also helped, not bottleneck our cash flow just by keeping it lean. And the way I recommend doing that is hire somebody who knows what they're doing so that you're not spinning your wheels on your third or fourth hire or overly training folks. Now, there's always going to be a learning curve to anything you're doing, even for the experts. But a true partner comes in and has a system or is telling you how they're going to run things and how do they fall in line with the end all goal. The second that you're trying to tell your partner what to do, they're not a true partner. That's an employee. So going out and finding really great partners that have a system that works for them. If I understand the system on a back of a napkin, it's very easy for me to green light that and let them go run at it. And then we just measure it, 60, 90 days, quarter over quarter. There's obviously things you look at month over month, but for the most part, I just let people be great at what they are great at and give them guardrails. And, as long as somebody's performing, they very rarely hear from me in a negative way. And it's copacetic. And I get to focus on, going and finding acquisition targets and doing the things that I think I should be doing as a leader to grow the portfolio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really great, and I'm glad that you were able to share kind of that percentage split. And for our listeners here, typically when I'm benchmarking SaaS companies, so SaaS versus software development agency, when I'm benchmarking software development agency, I usually benchmark around 20% of your total revenues to go towards a selling and marketing budget. When we're talking about SaaS, the name of the game is sales and marketing. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's the idea is that the technology is capable of generating a gross margin that's
Mm-hmm.
quite rich, right? Like an 80% gross margin. So there's a lot of room for growth of the business. So reinvesting that back into sales and marketing makes a ton of sense. So when you benchmark against the big boys, they are spending between 50, 70, sometimes 80% of their revenues on sales and marketing because it's all about how can we grow. So
Mm-hmm.
what you had just said is you said from a headcount perspective, about 30% in marketing, about 30% in sales. I'm like, you're right on par with how I would expect the benchmarking to go. Probably, I would imagine 50 to 60% of your costs are going to be going in sales and marketing, which is right in line with what you need to be doing if you want to be growing your tech company. So that's helpful. That's helpful perspective. Something else that you had mentioned, though, is basically a philosophy on hiring the right people. And I think you had said it, especially when you're first starting out, if you want to get a lot of momentum, you need to be bringing the people on who you're not the one telling them, this is how I want you to build it, because then they're an employee. You're really looking for a partner, somebody who they're telling you, this is how I want to build it. I imagine those people are probably not cheap, right? They probably cost a decent amount of money. Is that right?
Yeah, there's ways if you really want to move your business along, there's ways to move the needle and get creative, especially with great talent. And it could be an equity split or milestones on an equity vesting schedule with a salary. It can be a higher commission base. There's a couple ways to skin that cat where if you have somebody that's truly great at what they do and they think they can come in and make a difference, if you lay out the right incentive package or give them a milestone opportunity to earn equity into your company, it's amazing what equity can do to unlock the potential in a partnership, especially at a milestone basis. And from a brief, my experience at watching that and watching people just turn into absolute superstars because they have an opportunity to own a piece of a company and go above and beyond versus, this isn't part of my scope of work. I think that's the best way forward. And if you're a founder who's really cagey or handcuffing every percent of your company, it's going to be really hard to grow with great people unless you can figure out a way to lead with product-led growth and all through subscription sales on your website. At some point, you're going to need to have a partner. And if you're ever thinking about raising equity in your brand or your product isn't amazing, you're likely giving away equity for that debt.
Mm-hmm.
So my advice is very simple. Find some golden handcuffs, find great people, and set some milestones where, this is going to be a 1 to 3 year process with some sort of exit strategy or with, a light at the end of the tunnel. And you as the leader need to be you have to have the ability to eloquently paint that picture and lay out that roadmap so that they are just as excited to hustle and run at that with you, knowing that they're championing a division of the company. They're not coming in and, a lot of times they don't have all the resources that they probably had at the past company. But it's back to basics. We're getting gritty. And that's who I like to put myself around, as people that if the door doesn't open, we're finding a window. And if not, we're kicking that door open. That's just the way I like to do business.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, and it's paying off for you. It has paid off for you. It's going to continue to pay off for you. And I'm glad that you mentioned the aspect of like equity probably has to play some role if you want to get the right people in the right seats, having got kind of those more strategic partners at the seat of the table. So
Yeah.
that is excellent advice. So you've already given so much really good advice. What I want to do is, as we kind of come to a close on the show, I want you to be able to speak to somebody who is either just starting off in this space, maybe they're in their first year right now, or you're speaking to somebody who is still in corporate America, probably somebody in the software development kind of space. And what I'd love you to do is just share some words of wisdom for that person who's still a little bit green in their entrepreneurial venture. What would that advice be?
Learn to love delayed gratification and just embrace the suck. There's people I talk to all the time that think it's so much fun launching a startup, and really the fun part is like coming up with a logo and all that stuff is like, it gets me excited. But really growing a company is, you're constantly battling fires and coming up with solutions to problem or creating documentation that you didn't have before, and that's time consuming. And so it's love the process, understand that it's going to take time. So you have to have some sort of mental callus or just be really gritty and understand that it's going to take a year, maybe a year plus, for you to really just find a foundation of success. And if you're new to this and you probably have no idea what you're doing, it might take a little bit longer than that, because failing forward is a big part of how I got here and how a lot of entrepreneurs find themselves where they're at. Is they've had 50 ideas that bombed, or they're on their 10th or 12th business venture that's finally starting to sprout legs, and it's nothing to go bragging about. It's just cash flowing. So, set set that goal of like, where do you want to be and where do you envision this company taking you? Or financially, where do you need to be for this, to make sense for you? And then reverse engineer that. And it could be something as simple as, hey, I just want to have Fridays off. Okay, well, figure out a way to make just as much as you did at that other gig, Monday through Thursday, month over month, and provide a great service or a tool that allows you to have Fridays off. And you can streamline a lot of that, I'm sure, to, buy back that time. Or it can be, hey, I need to have all these systems in place before we turn the lights on. So I'm going to spend the next 6 months building out my CRM and my sales funnels and all my collateral and my supporting sales and marketing material. All those things are time consuming. And if you're just getting into the market and you haven't thought about that, you're one sales call away from somebody saying, send me your credit card authorization form. And you're like, don't have one. Now you're spending your whole day putting that together. So reverse engineer everything, figure out the endpoint, and just start backing into it as much as physically possible, or find somebody that's been there and done that can act as your river guide and just show you the way so you can kind of avoid the speed bumps and avoid the hurdles. And, you're still going to have a little bit of turmoil, much like anybody. But it's a lot easier when somebody can say, hey, this is how I've done it, and I have 5 exits under my belt. You're going to listen to that person.
That's really good. Reverse engineering was one piece. Reverse engineer that future, but also learn to embrace the suck. Because if you can tell that you're working with a true entrepreneur when they've had at least 20 different stories of things not going anywhere close to how they originally anticipated it going. So that's very good advice. Get mentally callous for sure. So I'm going to imagine people are going to be listening to this and be like, I would love to get in touch with Zack, or I want to follow his journey. So if people are in that spot, they want to follow your journey with SelfDisrpt, they want to just follow you as a person, what would be the best way for them to either reach out or to follow you on socials? Where could they go?
LinkedIn, that's the best place to find me. Very active and responsive on LinkedIn, pretty much 24/7. Even when I'm sleeping, there's somebody managing it on my behalf. So that's the best place to find me.
Awesome. Well, Zack, I want to say thank you again so much for taking the time today. We've learned a lot. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience has as well.
Tony, thank you very much for having me. It's been a long time coming.
And thank you to our listeners. If you found value out of our podcast today, please share it with your friends and subscribe for future episodes. Also, don't forget to leave us a review because it helps other people find us and hear inspiring stories like the one we heard today. If you are the founder of a software development agency, or you know somebody who is, and you'd like to share something exciting that you're up to with our audience, drop me a line at tony@equip.com. That's ACCQUIP.com.